9th, 2017 special meeting of the Riverton City Council to order at 7 p.m. And would Councilmember Gibbon lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, Councilmember Hancock will offer an invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet tonight as a city council and for the opportunity we have to discuss the needs of the city. We ask that it please help us that as we do so, we can keep in mind our obligation to the citizens and to ensure that what we do is in their best interest. We ask that it please enlighten our minds and help us to have a greater amount of ability to discern what would be best to do, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call.
Your Honor, Councilman Lance Godey.
Present.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
Here.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Here.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilman John Peterson.
Here.
Councilwoman Holly Gibbon. Here. Mayor John Baker.
I am present. Declare that we have a quorum. The chair would entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. And since we've got Robert Scheidemantel here, when we get to the work session portion of this, let's move him up to the top of that. Is that okay?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Any other changes we need to make on the agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye, and the motion passes. The item of business on the agenda for this evening is the ordinance 17-003, third and final reading, temporary merchants permit. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance number 17-003 by title only?
Your Honor, proposed ordinance number 17-003 on third and final reading, an ordinance amending Title V Business Licenses and Regulations, adding Chapter 5.30 Temporary Merchant Permitting of the Riverton Municipal Code and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 17-003 on third and final reading.
Your Honor, make a motion that we approve ordinance 17-003 on final reading.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Discussion, and I understand you would like to discuss this with us.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Ablard, and I just had a couple of points I wanted to bring up to you folks, if you could consider them. I guess leading up to that, if someone could tell me the purpose, I mean, I understand the purpose of the temporary merchant permit, but the fee that's attached to this merchant permit and what the purpose of that is.
The fees?
The fees, yes.
Well, I think the intention of the fees is to cover the cost of enforcement.
So income for the cost
Okay.
of enforcement. Okay. I didn't know.
I also think we've had some discussion about trash.
Okay.
So that if somebody was set up someplace, say they were selling food, then we'd provide a dumpster.
Sure.
That would, handle the trash issue.
Okay.
Okay.
So, a little background as to how I ended up here. My husband and I are putting together an ice cream truck for our daughters to work during the summer so that we could, basically we went to multiple different sporting events and school events, and it's not like it used to be where there were youth groups and concession stands, there just weren't as many vendors there we want to teach them. And so I came down to the city and I visited with Connie and then Sandy a little bit, and those ladies led me into what we thought would be the permit I would need, this temporary merchant permit. She also suggested or requested if I had any information on how other municipalities were doing it, and so I did a little work on that and visited with Lander and DuBois to understand, what it was that other temporary merchants needed. So I guess the 2 points that I wanted to bring up is that the fees that are attached to this at $450 for 6 months, is that correct?
Well, we haven't set the fees yet, but
But if the proposed fees, right? And then, sorry. And that the fee is non-refundable, and that this temporary merchant permit, you have to apply for it. And I thought that part of the purpose would be so that we could keep a record and an accountability of who's practicing business in Riverton, and that, it would be revocable. But we don't have business permits in the city of Riverton for all kinds of different businesses. So Sandy explained that part of it was, the fees for trash. And I think this is a comparable fee for people that would be residing outside of Fremont County. But I feel like as a resident of Fremont County, we're already paying those fees. I don't intend to be a temporary merchant. Like, I'm not investing $20,000 in this crazy truck that has bells and whistles to not do this next year. And so I think that, for your city residents, we are charging them, and what Riverton should be doing is promoting businesses. I don't think we want to try and hinder businesses coming to our city. And I just think the temporary merchant permit for residents of Riverton, or even Fremont County for that matter, would be better placed for out-of-town residents, I guess, if that makes sense. Lander does not require business permits. They do require a background check if your primary customers would be children, which I thought was wise. I mean, I'm going to be selling ice cream. Like, I think it's a good idea to check on me to make sure that you don't have pedophiles, peddling ice cream trucks. DuBois, same requirement within, like the commercial zoning of this place. So what we had in mind, and the lease agreements that I'm trying to put in place with different businesses, so basically I'm leasing out their parking lot. If I decide to park there, and because it's an ice cream truck, like, I want to be mobile. So when I'm actually parked, for instance, the gentleman down on the corner of Main and Federal, and Sandy was telling me the other reason is so that we have restrooms for our employees, which I can understand. But if we have an agreement with the businesses around us, which I just believe is polite, I don't think that would be a restriction. So.
okay. Anybody have any? Kyle?
I'm wondering, you describe it as a mobile ice cream vending system,
Yes.
and what we had thought about was specifically during the eclipse, that we thought of that this would be pertaining to City Park or areas like that. Where are you planning on setting up?
To tell you the truth,
Or are you just going to drive a route like the Tutti Frutti guy?
part of that. And to tell you the truth, I think I'm going to leave for the eclipse. I'm working out a lease agreement at 733 East Main, which is that old gas station that they've been trying to sell for years.
Oh, okay, up to the top there by the turn signal at 789 and US 26.
Prior to that, actually, right across from City Park. Okay. Oh, well, sorry. I'm not as good with my streets. Mr. Woodward, Bob Woodward, his Sears building is one of the other locations. And then other than that, I want to be mobile. Like, I thought that was the fun part of ice cream trucks, back in the day when you are in the street and in different communities. I also want to do events, and I understand, like, when I'm at the baseball parks or, rodeo grounds or whatnot, you're within the requirements of them and not the city. But I wanted to make sure I was being compliant for when we were.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mike?
I guess one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit is, again, like we talked about the eclipse, and there's going to be a ton of people coming in trying to make money off of that deal, which is
Sure.
fine. But we want to have some kind of control over that and make sure that when they're doing food vending, that they have a ag department license, so that they're following the food handling rules, and they have health, liability insurance, and all of those kind of things. And without having some kind of a permit process in place, we can't do that.
Right.
The way it was before we started this, is that if you wanted to get on somebody's property, they would have to come before city council, get a variance, go through a long drawn-out process to get you permission to be there. Because if not, you couldn't have been there at all.
Right, because
So
you
we're
can't just,
trying to improve this and make it more streamlined. And so for, the safety of the public, so if somebody gets sick eating your ice cream or somebody else's hot dog or whatever, you've got an egg certificate showing you're following the health rules, you've got liability insurance,
Sure.
you're doing all of those kind of things. And you take Lander, for example, if they want a background check, well, if you don't have to have a permit, there's no way for them to make you come get a background check.
and they do, they make you apply for a permit, but I guess I'm just saying that's their fee. I mean, that's their red tape, I guess, that you walk through.
And really, we're keeping it fairly reasonable. If you look at what one of the Maine and federal merchants pay for property taxes every year, I think you'll find that what you end up having to pay with whatever lease you're going to give them is still going to be a pretty good deal.
Right,
And, it's not fair, if that's the right word, for you to be able to compete with a established business paying taxes, property
brick and mortar,
is paying sewer, water, whatever.
sure,
You get to come in for free
right.
to compete with them. So trying to keep all of that in balance, and so
And I do believe that a fee
history.
of, $450, that's $900 a month for this little mobile vending truck, or $900 a year. And I understand trash was one of the issues, and the cost of trash and what that will cost. But a contractor's permit is $75, and the amount of trash that's generated at a construction site is far going to supersede, so it's not that I'm saying a fee should not be charged. I just feel that and I don't know, maybe you cannot structure it that way, but a different fee for out-of-county residents. There was an exception in this for farm and garden products by Fremont County residents, and I don't understand why that couldn't be incorporated into the
We add
whole.
ice cream to that.
Do you buy your own milk? I mean, is this product?
Oh, I didn't think of that angle. Yeah. Should I get a cow to go with the harebrained idea?
The agricultural products.
Well, you certainly give us some food for thought, and I think some of that can be taken care of with the fee structure.
I'm all about us charging people from Colorado and Utah that are coming in for the.
There you go.
Let's do that. But I don't know if you can set that forth as a Fremont County resident pays this, and and I guess when it comes to the trash fees, when you look at the breakdown of what the city charges, and when I run to the dump on Saturday, it's $5 up to 200 pounds. Well, I'm going to dump a lot of trash for $900 a year. I mean,
Your Honor,
Please?
that's not our trash. We don't, that's the county, where we don't charge that.
at the
Yeah,
We don't.
station, okay.
Oh, yeah.
it's not ours.
Yeah, the city of Riverton actually has to pay the solid waste district roughly $900,000 a year in tipping fees.
Something I did not know, okay.
All right, so when we come around and pick up your garbage, we take it off and pay them
Take care.
almost $1 million a year to dump it.
I see.
Okay, so that's what your the garbage fee that you pay at home, or as a commercial business would pay,
Sure.
is to cover the tipping fees that we have to pay, plus our cost of picking it up.
I see.
So the city doesn't, the city provides the service of collecting the garbage, but the solid waste district charges us to tip it.
Okay.
Okay, but you're probably right, and if you looked at a construction site, and they had a bunch of demolition or something, they would be paying to have a roll-off delivered up there.
Right.
Okay, and then they would be paying by the pound.
Sure.
To put it in the landfill. So, there'd be a charge for that, whereas what we're looking at here would be, and of course, I know this doesn't fit everything. You probably sell everything with ice cream, cone, okay, so there's not even a paper wrapper to throw away, you see. They'd have to eat it all.
Right. Well, and I intend to recycle my little flour,
Right, okay, so various businesses obviously will have a different impact on the trash, but I can imagine some businesses would produce quite a little bit of throwaway stuff.
Okay.
And so then we'd, and I just don't know how to put that together. So but I think that comes in the fee structure. Sandy, have you got some insight?
I have a little bit. You are Amber?
Amanda.
Amanda. And when I talk with Amanda, since she's not going to be set up for a full 6 months at any one place, and so it's going to be kind of scattered and a lot of it won't even be there, we told her that we would try, since this is a little bit different, that if this 450 came into place, she could pay 450 for the entire year because it would only be an accumulation of 6 months, say. And so we were trying to give her a break on that and not charge her, 2 6-month things because she's not going to be there the whole entire time. She would just be there an accumulative, say, 6 months out of that. So that we were just trying to give her a break because it is a little different than normally would be. And so we were trying to work this out. I know she's more of a local person and that type of thing. And we were trying to work out, we've got a couple other businesses in town, which I have talked about, that we need to try to figure something out. And again, the other businesses are a little bit more permanent. They have their own power and some things like that. So we're still working on some of those. This ordinance is for the temporary merchants, that are going on different properties. So we figured that if we did that and made the 450, that would be a little more in line with what she's planning to do, because she is planning on being more mobile and not just sitting at some place for 6 months.
Mr. Larson?
So that's considering that obviously January is not going to be a top seller, nor is February or November. So you're thinking that you would charge really for 6 months because that's about what she's going to be using.
Your Honor, that is correct. We were trying to work with her a little bit on that.
It's the 450.
Thank you.
But
Your Honor, could we amend something like that to give our department head that type of leniency so they can work out?
Well, I think that's going to come up here in a little bit when we talk about fee schedule.
Good.
See, so am I right in the way you envision this? Is that the fee schedule for this is something that's totally independent of the merchant's permit?
Your Honor, yes.
Yeah, that's what I see. Okay, so I guess what we need to do is decide whether or not we want to do the transient merchant's permit, yes or no. Okay, and consider the issues about fees, safety, the issues that we're trying to regulate this to some degree, and then move on, and we'll talk about fees in a little bit,
Okay.
and we'll try to figure that out.
And the fee, I didn't know if you can attach those fees to, if that's legal to put the kind of wording in where you attach it to
Well, see, and so we set this.
non-Fremont County residents.
Create up, and so we create a law that allows us to charge a fee.
Okay,
Okay, so then by council action at a later date, we can adjust the fee.
I see.
Okay, that way we don't have to go through 3 readings and that type of thing to do it. So, so we say you can charge a fee to collect garbage, and then every year we talk about how much the garbage fee has to be this year in order to cover our costs. But we don't have to go through 3 readings in order to change the,
Interesting.
okay?
Okay,
All right.
Your Honor.
So I think we'll get to that point here. We're going to take some action here, and then we'll shut this down, and we're actually going to go to a work session. And then during that discussion, the work session, we will try to come up with some plan for the fees. So then next week, we'll come back and pass the fees.
Okay.
Okay?
So for instance, the other businesses, and I know I discussed them with Sandy, the Shaved Ice Barn or the hot dog place, same scenario, or do those fall under a different one, or?
Yeah, see, and so this is a struggle because everybody is a little bit different.
Yeah,
Everybody is.
that's why we like to live here.
So then you try to figure out how to create something that covers, I guess, most people, huh? And, all right,
Okay,
thanks for your comments.
I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Call for a question.
Time for a question? Okay, are we ready, done talking about this, are we?
Can I make a comment too, or,
Oh, yeah, come on up, Liza, if you're interested in.
well, didn't come down because I got nothing better to do on Tuesday night. Clarification, what I got from what I just heard was that the fee is going to be basically a garbage collection fee.
No. It would include a garbage fee.
Well, see, regardless where she parks or anybody parks, I'm already paying for garbage collection. If I have a renter on my property, they're able to use the commercial dumpsters that I'm paying for.
Sure,
So the garbage is already being paid for.
okay.
That one there, I kind of have an issue with. The fees are exorbitant. And they just flat out exorbitant. She might be okay with spending $450 a month, but I've got a lot of people who have parked over there. But that's the $50 a day. They're just going to tell me to go pound sand. I mean, my fruit guy, I'm not going to, he has better fruit than some of the other ones. He won't be coming here no more. So by driving them out, you're denying the consumers of this town opportunities to shop, to get things that they can't get. Because the Grand Junction peaches are just a lot better than Palisade peaches. That's my opinion. I had an issue with, I was kind of concerned with what I read in the paper about the only one vendor per lot. You know, back in the days when I still had the store and we'd have our big promotions, there's some of the promotions we had, we'd have 2 or 3 or 4 food vendors there just to, spice it up and get people down there to come shopping. I mean, I understand the concern with the eclipse. I think that passing a law like this just because the eclipse is not sensible. I do agree that it does need to be regulated. You can't just have a free-for-all. I understand, I know some folks had, on the planning commission or whatever, said the Board of Adjustments, I guess it was, Howard, for example, insisted that the variance was not actually the right tool to use. And I'm not going to dispute that or agree with it, but I will tell you, though, when you did have the variance, it was up to me to make sure that insurance was paid, tax license was in effect, and health inspection was in effect, was current. I'd just as soon not have to do that. I mean, if you guys want to take that on, that's fine with me. As far as the fees are concerned, realistically, in my opinion, the only fair fees you can have are the cost of administering the program. If you're charging $150 a week, then you're climbing into the profit, into the pocket of the business people. You've made yourself a partner so that you can make some money, but you're not contributing anything to the success of their business. You're just allowing them to do what all the rest of us do. And like she said, I never paid a fee to the city. I paid taxes on the property, and so your comment on property taxes is irrelevant. It's just like the garbage collection. If they're leasing or renting or even getting free space on commercial property, all of those services and all those taxes are already being paid by the property owner. So, yes, the city should not. I know whenever I bring the paperwork over, Connie'd have to do the paperwork, and I don't know, I think she said take her a couple, 3 hours or so to do the paperwork for a new vendor, and by rights, absolutely, they should pay for that. Because the taxpayers of the city should not be paying for somebody who's renting space on my property. But conversely, they should not be contributing you should not be helping yourself to some of their profits just because you can. I just don't think that's right. So, another question, and this, I know this is all the stuff we're still trying to work out. Who does this apply to? Does it apply to a mobile vendor, like the taco bus that's no longer here? He was permanently parked, he paid rent, and he had a utility, he paid utilities on his property. If so, if it's going to apply to him, then it's probably going to apply to the coffee kiosk over here too. And Ann's not going to be very happy about having to pay you guys $450 every 6 months just to sell coffee. You know, she's got a permanently anchored down building, but it's there. It was there under the guise of the variance, or at least that was my understanding. I could be wrong on that.
No, separate, totally separate.
So what's the difference between the taco bus and the coffee kiosk, other than maybe the bus can be moved? If it's potentially mobile?
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
may I answer that? The taco bus and the shaved ice place have their own power and electricity at this time, and basically pretty much sitting there. They were not under this temporary.
So they would have been, okay, that's, I want a quick clarification on that.
And then if I may answer your question about the one vendor per lot, if you would have continue to read that, it's one vendor per lot unless you can maintain 100 foot,
100 foot or something, how much was it?
100 foot between the merchants.
You know, that could be, even on my lot, that's not going to be possible. Well, it is, but it becomes extremely unhandy for everybody if I try, put one clear over the fence and then puts the next one 2/3 of the way down the lot right in front of, access to the stores and stuff. I understand the concern with not wanting to have it look like a hobo city, but.
And Your Honor, the reason for that is most of the established commercial businesses are required to have a certain amount of parking for their businesses, and so that was another reason to limit that. And that was something that is done in several of the other municipalities.
And maybe some verbiage should be put in instead that the legal number of parking spaces has to be maintained.
We did.
And beyond that, then it's.
It's in the ordinance also.
One other thing, I understand the protectionism. I'm totally opposed to that. One of the reasons this town has more shopping and more everything than Lander is because everybody knows the Lander City Fathers have always done everything they could to keep people out. Treating somebody from Colorado who's coming in here to sell stuff differently than somebody from Du Bois, and you have the right to do it, I think is wrong. I just think it's absolutely wrong. It makes us just as small as all the other protectionist places around that are starving. As far as the fees, it doesn't seem like much, but to a lot of these guys, they're just barely making it. That's the reason I don't have a taco bus there anymore. Because a year and a half ago, when he first showed up here, excuse me, they were doing turnarounds out here at the gas plant, and he was busy all the time. But it's dead. He closed up shop because he was starving. You start throwing another $50 for a day or $450 every 6 months. You may think it's chump change, but if it's somebody who's just barely breaking even, that's very well might be the difference between them being in business and them shutting down. So, something to chaw on, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Wanted to contribute that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess I have a question. Sandy, do you anticipate that what we're going to pass here will come back to this in 2 weeks and have to amend it?
Your Honor, I don't think that what you are going to vote on here would have to be amended. My guess is we might do a different ordinance for the different types of people that are not temporary merchants, per se.
I see. Okay. Somebody other than a temporary merchant.
We were thinking seasonal. It was something that we were talking about was a seasonal merchant. Now, a local seasonal merchant or something. We haven't had time to really look. We've been working so hard on this one, we haven't really had a time to figure the other out yet. If you have some ideas, we'd be
Your Honor, I think it could be reasonably handled in the fee structure, which is our conversation for the work session.
Okay.
I think giving us the ability to do the permits and then how we set up the fee structure is really what I think most of the conversation has been about. And so I think overall, our ordinance is sound. I think we need to take a good, strong look at the fee structure, and that's where we could make some, some additional levels or varying types of fees.
No, I guess my thought is there any way we could, what are your thoughts on 100 feet there? I mean, I know what you were saying about parking and everything. The point that he's making about the fee structure, that's all later on. That's stuff that can be adjusted and moved with. But I mean, the one thing that I guess we could look at and consider here would be, do we want to change that 100-foot setback between merchants? How strongly do you feel about that as being 100 feet as opposed to any other amount?
Your Honor, again, I believe we took that from some other municipalities, and as
Sorry, Marion, I didn't get that.
as Visor mentioned, one of the things that when we started trying to work on a temporary merchant license
You've got it on your screen.
many years ago, was to not have this place have temporary merchants on, every few feet. And that was really the biggest reason that was put in place, I believe, at that time.
Whereabouts is this 100 feet talked about?
It's in 5.30.40A1.
Yep.
Established commercial property with the permission of the established business owner, not more than one merchant
Oh,
at
I've got
one
it,
time
I've got it.
per commercial lot will be permitted unless a minimum of 100 feet. I wonder if we could also leave that.
Are we talking about square feet? Are we talking about 100 feet? What are we talking about?
Distance in between.
Distance in between, straight feet.
8
feet.
feet,
Feet between them. Okay. So the idea is that each merchant has an opportunity to have somebody come park next to him to shop.
Your Honor, and again, that's pretty much up to council if they, and the mayor, if that's something that they want to do, is to put temporary merchants closer together. That's, on our main streets.
Have we, sorry, Your Honor,
Holly?
had a problem with it recently, or? I mean, I haven't even noticed anything. I mean, am I the only one? But I haven't really noticed.
Shop was gone.
I didn't either, I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was there.
Okay, so
I mean,
the issue, though, isn't, have we had a problem in the past? We're looking at this crush that we're going to see in a couple of months in August.
Crush.
The anticipated crush.
Oh, do you have something else?
no.
So
Go ahead.
is there something in a health code or something like, is that where, I mean, I can see if it's one kind of vendor, you don't want them too close to another vendor, and you got to be 100 feet away from bathrooms and stuff like that, all the stuff that comes into it. Is that where this came from, or is it just 100 feet? Sounds good.
Your Honor, I believe that's probably more of an aesthetic type of a situation in this situation. And I want
Go ahead.
to answer to Holly just once really quickly. This would be the first time that we would be allowing temporary vendors on any established business within town. And prior to this, any business that wanted to have a temporary merchant would have to come in and go through a whole process and a variance and those types of things, and most of them didn't want to mess with that. And so now, if a temporary merchant wants to come into town, they have the ability, provided the established business has enough room on their lot, they could actually have temporary vendor on their lot then.
So I guess it just kind of, my brain goes both ways, is that, yes, I realize that we're going to be doing this for the eclipse, but once the eclipse is over, we're still going to have this ordinance. So then we don't want to be hurting the ones that are still here and the ones that want to come after that. So I mean, we kind of got to look both the present and the future, I guess, kind of an idea, both angles.
Kyle?
The temporary vendors, food trucks, etc., they do not park on a parking lot. They move in front of a business. Okay? They're in front of the business. They have a route just like the paper route. They're there at 3 o'clock. They're there at 5 o'clock. They do their business. They sell their wares, and then they move to the next location. So the point about having so many, that doesn't happen. I'm sorry, but Mr. Zorn, that just doesn't happen. I've got a large lot just like yours. And for me to deny somebody to come in and sell peaches or grapes or whatever, that just, next to the hot dog stand, it just doesn't happen. I mean, how many of you turned away?
If that's what you're,
How many of you turned away?
because of,
How many of you turned away?
turned any away.
That's my question.
No,
That's it.
Let me finish my sentence. Let me answer your question or not?
No, you've already answered it.
Away because of the one per lot part of the ordinance, because that didn't exist. In the past, I could have however many I wanted, as long as they met the criteria.
Can you come up to the mic so that we can hear you better?
I haven't turned anybody away in the past because of the one per lot part of the ordinance, because it didn't exist. And multiple times, I've had numerous vendors on my property at the same time. Some were there permanently, some were there for a single event. That didn't exist. But if it does exist now, then in the future, and right now, nothing's happening. But your ordinance is going to be on the books until somebody comes along and removes it. 5 years from now, we all hope and pray this town comes back to life and we can all start making money again, and places are going to be busy. And let me say, the money I make off of these guys is chump change. Even though I have no income right now, the money I make off of them is chump change. But they're there for other things. They're there because I like to use them. They're there because they're a draw for customers. They just keep the place going. It's beneficial to have hoopla on your property when you're in retail. Thank God I'm not anymore. But you never know.
John?
Can I ask him a question?
Yeah.
So how much do you make a day off a vendor, or a month?
It depends.
Rough estimate.
People there permanently is usually about $250 a month.
250 a month?
$250 a month.
Okay.
Oh, your $450 for 6 months is about a 15% increase in their rent.
How do you figure?
Because $450 for 6 months breaks down to $50, not quite $50 a month.
Compared to your 250? Mm-hmm. So it sounds like we're saving them $200.
No, they're still going to pay me rent.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to let them park on my property for free. If you think that I'm going to give up rent so that you guys can charge them, then wow, I'd like to have what you got.
Well, I'm not saying that, but I mean, you're saying that you charge them $250 times 6 is what?
$3,000 a year.
$1,500.
$1,500
for 6 months.
Yeah, for 6 months. And now you're adding almost another 50. Oh, it's
400.
more than $50 a month. More than $50 a month. Like what's that? $75 a month.
That's all I want to know. I just want to know how much you get from them.
Now, like the $50 a day, if you made that for 2 days, that would be a lot better. Because now you're down to $25 a day, and that's not that bad. My peach guy, I used to charge him $50 a day when he was making thousands of dollars a day, and then last couple times he was there, he got off for a box of peaches.
But we can't, as a council, we can't segregate and say, okay, how much do you think you're going to make? Okay, we only charge you $20 because you're only going to make this amount. We can't do that. That's not fair.
Well, I understand that. You have to.
That's what it sounds like we're trying to.
No, what I'm saying is the fees. What I was talking about with the fees, they need to be more reasonable.
Okay.
But
We're going to talk about that later.
yeah, I know. I understand that. He was asking about how many I turned away because of the ordinance that doesn't exist yet.
I have one more question for you, Advisor.
Yes, sir.
How many frontage feet do you have there?
150 feet frontage.
Okay. So you could have two
I could have two, but what that does, that puts the second one over there,
by the coffee shack.
yeah, right there by the coffee shop, where we would like to do it with the peculiarities of ours. We'd had one over by the fence, one about 10 feet this side of that light
What
pole.
would be a reasonable distance? Or
You know,
Location.
what's reasonable on my property is
50 on your property?
Pardon?
We need some way to come up with a rule that everybody could live with,
Wish I could
that
come
does
up.
not let you put 50 of them
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Okay, so if I just say you can do whatever you want, means you can have 50.
Well, first off, as long as you have verbiage in there about maintaining the minimum number of open parking spaces, that's going to limit me right there. I don't think I could probably get away with more than 2, maybe 3, and still maintain a legitimate number, legal number of parking spaces. As far as the verbiage, I don't know.
Do you know how
I'd
many?
be pretty good with words, but I'd have to take the time to think about how to say that,
Yep.
because what works on my property isn't going to work on yours.
I understand. How many parking spaces do you have?
As many as you can cram in there because they're all faded off. I don't know. I don't know. They're not marked.
30 maybe, right?
Yeah, you could get at least 30 in there.
I'm just-
If I had to, I could put parking in the back, but
Okay.
and I honestly, I don't know what the legal number of parking spaces for my property is, what the required number would be.
And that would be my question to Sandy is, okay, so Sandy, if we were going to put a restaurant on a piece of property, how do you come up with the amount of parking spaces that you assign that that business should have?
There is a code in the, actually, it's a chart in the municipal code that tells us how many parking spaces per, the number of
Seat or
people or the,
something,
yeah, it
Depends on your occupancy.
depends on the occupancy, exactly right.
I mean, that would be an alternative.
Yep.
Is we could say they have to, the trick becomes, in his current position, he'd be okay because he's got a lot of vacant parking spaces.
Correct.
But if he still had a Sears there, and he still had the nail salon, and he still had Corral West, I don't even know how far your property goes, but you have to look at that space and say, okay, they all get 10 each, then you're down to where, you couldn't make them have to have 5 apiece, or you still wouldn't only get 2 in there.
So mine's got 48,
Right.
but in the corner's got the hot dog stand.
So that would make the community development department go, okay, the hot dog stand gets 8, and the chiropractor gets 8, and your office gets 5, and, they'd have to sit down and do that calculation depending on who's in your building.
Well, they've already done that.
Right.
And that's the
And I think
48.
you probably wouldn't have any problem, but I think you take a lot of lots where there's not a lot of extra space, they're gonna get 1, and that's all they're gonna get, probably. A little 100-foot business that's already got something going on, they're gonna get 1. So I don't think it's probably an issue for a lot of them. But, I mean, you've took Walmart parking lot, all of a sudden, they could put 10 in there.
Bet you Walmart doesn't allow
They won't allow,
resident on there to compete with them.
None of your corporate.
You can sleep there at night.
yeah, unless you're just pulling your camper, you'll be okay.
You can sleep there at night, but don't sell anything.
Yeah.
It's like Disneyland. Your Honor, I think we ought to call for the question.
Well, we've certainly had an opportunity to discuss this a great deal, and I think we've learned quite a little bit. I'm not, are we, I don't have anybody that wants to propose any amendments to this after this discussion.
Can I make one more comment? The only other thing, as Visor was saying, that your Fremont County residents actually are, like he was saying, he's paying property taxes. If they're a resident and they own a home, I mean, I realize the generation of garbage from one area is going to be more, but we are, in fact, paying those taxes here in town. We're already community members. We're, I feel like you're local residents, and that should be a consideration. I'm already a resident of Riverton. We're already contributing to those things.
Doesn't want.
No?
That's a fee,
I have-
Your Honor. I'd say that's a fee issue, so.
Yes.
It still comes into the fee discussion.
Oh,
I would propose an amendment to the distance between businesses, that we change it to 50. Or, I shouldn't make an amendment that has an or, I guess.
If you're making a suggestion.
Yeah. Or we go to a certain number of parking spaces.
I like this parking space idea.
I need a second.
Second.
Under C, it says mobile carts, mobile vending trailers, or any other type of convenience must remain minimum of 25 from the right-of-way line. Customers must also be behind right-of-way lines.
So that limits them even more.
Scroll down to the 100-foot thing here. It's right there. What this, no, you went,
Okay,
where's the,
where was that?
I think Councilman Larson is right, though. We've already got that as a limitation as well, the
Right.
setback.
that's right.
So,
So that currently
Like the idea
reads,
of
it's right,
50,
it's right there.
The 50 would work.
So that currently reads, the established commercial property with the permission of the established business owner, not more than one merchant at one time per commercial lot will be permitted unless a minimum of 100 feet can remain between merchants.
and I think aesthetically it makes sense to do that, but I do like the idea of
Realistically.
limiting it in some way, so we're not sitting there and, we want to be able to encourage it, but
Okay, so you said 50 feet?
Yes.
So we have an amendment proposed to change 100 to 50.
And I said second.
You second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we change 100 feet to 50 feet. Is there any discussion on that amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye. Okay. So now, are we ready to vote on the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As amended. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Third reading has to be.
Oh, third reading? It's a roll call. I'm sorry. Okay.
So do we have to have a motion to approve? We already have that,
We're
right?
good.
We already
We
did,
have that, so now it's just a roll call?
yeah.
All right.
So we've got the motion, right?
Yes.
Okay, we adopted that before we started this discussion. Okay, I wanted to get that out of the way, make sure our parliamentary procedure was halfway right. Okay, so it's time for roll call vote then,
Okay.
okay?
All right. Councilman Lance Godey.
Vote aye.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
aye.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Aye.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Aye.
Councilman Sean Peterson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Holly Gibbon.
Aye.
Mayor Baker.
I vote yes, the motion passes. Okay, the chair would entertain a motion to convene into a work session.
Motion to convene into work session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye, and we are convened into a work session, and we're going to move Robert Scheidemantel to the top of the list here so he can, I thought this would only take a minute, Robert, but it's, obviously, we had more work to do on this, and we have more work to do on it yet, but you go ahead and tell us about North Federal, will you, please?
Don't have too much. Mayor, council, just to let you know, we're moving along pretty fast on the North Federal project. The letting, I shouldn't say the letting, the bid opening will be July 13th. So we'll know who the contractor is preliminary-wise after the bid opening on July 13th. Everything's going forth on the storm sewer, sanitary sewer. You guys, I don't know if you guys have seen the plans, but I know Kyle and Dawn and some of you guys have looked through the plans and approved those and everything. So everything as far as the city's concerned, we're pretty good on. DOT portion of it, we're pretty well set too. We have a final plan meeting on Thursday, this Thursday. It'll be 6:30, City Council here, Chambers. We'll have big plans set out for the public meeting. So if you have any questions regarding any construction or anything going on your property or anything, come on in. So other than that, if you guys have any questions right now, I'd be happy to answer them.
You say that's the 11th? Is that the 11th?
Thursday, the 11th, yes.
Thursday, the 11th. Yep.
6:30, starts at 6:30 at night.
6:30 here.
Advertisement said treats.
Treats?
Leave that up to Cody Beers.
I don't know.
Probably cookies and water.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Anybody have any questions about North Federal?
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
So, when I was down there for WHAM in, whenever I went down to WHAM, January. We talked to YDOT, and they said that no ground or work will begin until after the eclipse. Is that still?
that is still the plan.
Okay.
We have said in the construction requirements that basically there will be no work done 2 days prior or 2 days after, I think, in the construction requirements. I can verify that. Or during the eclipse. There will be no work done. There's a $10,000 a day liquidated damage for that. As far as no work done prior to the eclipse, there is a section of storm sewer that is completely off of the right-of-way, completely out of the road and completely off the sidewalk. It is on the east side of Federal, from approximately 150 foot north of Sunset all the way to Webwood. Now, I don't foresee the contractor working on that, because if the project gets let or open bid on July 13th, they probably will not get their notice to proceed until the first week of August. After they get their notice to proceed, they're going to have to get the pipe manufactured. So I don't think you're going to see many pipe manufacturers around that's going to have a bunch of 60 and 72-inch pipe just laying around ready for sale. They might have to order it and get it made. So you might look at a month or two getting that material made.
Okay.
So I don't think there's going to be any construction going on.
So you say that, when was the contract going to be? Have we had a pre-contract meeting yet?
What?
Have we had a?
Pre-construction meeting?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Pre-construction meeting occurs after the contract has been awarded.
Okay, so you're thinking that there's going to be work being done in August?
No, probably not. They will get the letter of award probably the first week of August. I don't see a contractor coming in that quick. I do foresee them, if there's a staging area available to them north of, behind Walmart, I don't know where they would stage their equipment. I could definitely see them.
Webwood Road has that parking lot where the concrete plant used to be. That's all vacant, but how many
I don't foresee them.
people are you going to have on the just initial startup?
Don't know. It all depends on the contractor's schedule that will happen at the pre-construction meeting. The contractor will have to bring us a schedule. We'll have to know what he's going to start on, when he's going to start it. And at that time, we'll know how many people they're going to bring in. I can foresee the contractor possibly bringing in some Tracos, some compactors, some trucks, but we did not provide the contractor with the staging area. He could contact the Cretex concrete place there on Webwood Road. If he wants to set up and pay $250 a month or whatever for a staging area for all his equipment, that's acceptable. If he wants to pay another business, that's acceptable, whatever.
What I'm trying to say is I feel you're optimistic in when you're going to start.
I'm thinking when we're going to start is probably around middle of September, probably October.
That's, yeah, 1st of October, and you'd be lucky.
Yeah. If the contractor has pipe available, he might get going as soon as September 1st.
As long as it's not August 21st, we're good.
No, I don't foresee that happening at all.
That's what Sean's worried about.
That could be a nightmare.
No, I don't foresee that happening at all.
Okay.
Big
Thank you,
6-foot
sir.
trench across Federal at Maine maybe or something, but that's it.
No 6-foot trench across Federal. No.
Okay.
It has to be open to unrestricted traffic, and I think a 6-foot trench restricts them a little bit.
Aliens.
Okay. Any other questions for Robert tonight?
Thanks, Rob.
Let him go home.
Yeah, no problem. I look forward to seeing you guys at the meeting, some of you at least.
Thursday night.
Thursday night, yep.
He'll be there, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Looking forward to a picture,
Okay.
okay? Some plans.
Have a good night.
Thank you, good night. Thanks for waiting for us. All right. Okay, so now we're going to talk about temporary merchant fees. This is a discussion. We're not going to take any action on this tonight, okay? But we do want information. Okay? That's what we don't want to, okay. So, could we have the Community Development Director's report, please?
Yes, Your Honor. These fees have been discussed extensively for temporary merchants for our ordinance, and these fees will be established by the council, by the City Council by resolution separately from the ordinance, which was just passed. We've had a lot of meetings. So after several meetings and work sessions, we have come up with the following proposed schedule. The permit fee for 1 day was $50, 7 days, $150, 3 months, $300, and 6 months, $450. The 2 or 3 existing seasonal businesses that are established with their own power will be considered local seasonal businesses and will not be regulated as temporary merchants at this time. What I
Okay. Council? Mike?
Sandy, regarding those businesses that are sort of mobile, temporary, short-term, seasonal, whatever you want to call them, are they supplying the city with any liability, health code, sales tax, any of that kind of stuff?
Your Honor, that is one of the things that we will have to do. We've not established those fees or that on how to handle those yet at this point in time. We know they're different than the temporary merchants from out of town. So that was the reason we knew we had to do something different. We just haven't figured out what.
And I guess, to me, one of the challenges I think we have is coming up with language that charges fee to people out of town, but yet the same person doing the same thing in town wouldn't pay, and I think that could be considered discriminatory. So I think we need to come up with a better way to describe that.
Correct.
Mr. Larson?
How many currently do we have?
Temporary merchants?
Yeah.
At this point,
I mean,
we have any.
the temperature in May, there's normally one over there on the ice shop. It's right there on across from Safeway, but that's the only one I'm aware of. And we don't call the coffee shops transient because they've got a foundation and their own electricity and air conditioning. So how many are there?
Your Honor, at this point in time, I don't believe we have any.
You mean how many variances are there?
No, how many temporary merchants are out there?
Today.
On variances right now.
On variances? As far as variances go, we have four. On variances, we have 4, I believe, unless I'm forgetting.
Which are those then?
There's one out at the co-op, and that is specifically for produce. Advisors, which is the temporary merchants that he gets there. We have one for the ice temporary, or the one on Woodward's property. And then we have one at the Oddfellows Hall. And they have temporary merchants there too.
So they just, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So they just keep those variances open? So if somebody comes in, they can utilize it?
Your Honor, that is a variance, which that's not what a variance is supposed to be used for.
That's why I'm asking.
And, but we needed a way to at least monitor it in some manner. So that was brought up quite a few years ago in order to at least regulate a little bit of the temporary merchants at that time. So any business that had room to have a temporary merchant could come in, go through the variance process. The people within 140 foot of that business would have to approve that it's okay that they had a variance to have temporary merchants there. And when that was approved, then they had 1 year to do that. Then the owner was then required to make sure that they had their health certificates and their sales tax licenses and so forth.
And based off this new one, the city is going to do all that verification?
That is correct.
Okay.
Is there any problem with having those become temporary merchants rather than going through, I mean, that was the idea, wasn't it? Is going forward, we wouldn't have to be doing the variance process and instead do the permitting process, correct?
That is correct. And that is correct because a true variance is not being able to make use of your property. I mean, there's a lot of different things, but a variance within the Community Development Department, the temporary merchants really didn't fit in there.
Your Honor? Yeah, a variance normally would be for something that, for example, wouldn't be in your zoning. That would be outside of your zoning. You want to do something more than what commercial highway would normally let you do or something like that. So.
I guess the way I'm reading the ordinance we just passed, I'm thinking that each of those, at least for right now, with the way things are written, would be defined as temporary merchants. The businesses are there for less than 6 months, operating on a commercial property. I mean, as it stands right now, I think the process that we have under our ordinance would be having them operate as a temporary merchant unless we pass something else.
Lance?
Your Honor, I guess the 6-month thing and whether they're 6 months or more than 6 months, really, speaking or taking from what Amanda had said, is that if you're operating for more than 6 months, then you're no longer temporary. So then it wouldn't cover you. So it would necessitate either I think a different ordinance makes more sense for what would be a permanent but not perfectly mortared type of situation, that we need to plan for developing something that covers a permanent, because we passed one that said 6 months or less. And by argument, they could say, I do more than 6 months over time. So I think this makes perfect sense for the truly temporary people that are here seasonally for certain periods of time. But I think that.
I mean, in other words, I see this as something that would not apply to the taco bus, I guess is what you were calling it. That's not, I mean, that would be something that we'd have to have a different sort of way of dealing with that, whether it's a variance or whatever it is. But when we've got, for example, the Bighorn Co-op that's having people come in a day or two at a time or a week or two at a time bringing produce, I mean, that is a little bit different. I mean, we're talking about different things here. And I see what you're saying, where you're saying that's arguably because you've got a set, you're here, you're regular, you're coming on a regular basis. That might be different, and you're saying that's different than maybe 6 months or less. But anyway, I guess I'm digressing from the fees.
No, I think it's, okay, so.
How did we come up with, you said that we contacted other municipalities and you got guidance on the schedule, $50, $150. If it were linear, it'd be $350 for 7 days, and 3 months it'd be outstanding, and half a year it'd be the rest of your life. How did we come up with this fee schedule?
Your Honor, we actually looked at a lot of different municipalities and kind of came up with one that was in the middle of the road of all the different fees.
Okay.
So they're.
You don't feel they're excessive?
Pardon?
You don't feel they're excessive? Or you have no feelings? You just reported what you found?
I think that's correct. I mean, and it depends on how you look at it. We wanted to make sure that we were able to cover our fees for the paperwork that we're doing, and making sure that, we want to make sure they have their health certificates, and, like the mayor said, so that we don't have some people sick. And we want to make sure that they're paying sales tax and those types of things, so that they're a little more fair with our regular businesses here in town. I mean, we get some complaints from a lot of the regular businesses when we do get temporary merchants in town, if they don't feel that they're at least paying the same types of things that the regular businesses are paying. So, the $50 for one day, and maybe that thing is $50 could be for 3 days. I know we had that at one point in time. So if somebody wanted to come and do a weekend or a weekend and a day, the $50 would still probably cover our paperwork on something like that. So I mean, there is some leeway in on these fees. If you have some other thoughts on them.
Okay.
We've changed them, I don't know how many times, trying to decide on.
Okay, so the process would be that a person would come in and they'd bring their sales tax license and their health inspection?
They would give us proof. Yeah.
Proof of those, and bring that in. That's what they would have to show.
And I think insurance, too. I think liability insurance was one of the items.
Okay, all right, so they bring that in. What is the difference between somebody that's going to be here 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, or 6 months? There would be a certain amount of time involved in writing that permit. So unless then code enforcement has to go around to them on a weekly basis and check that all that stuff is still functional, which most of those licenses would be for a year's period of time, right? You wouldn't, I guess what I'm trying to say is that charging additional fees for time, there has to be something related to that. And if garbage is an issue, okay, then you could say, well, okay, here's the rule, is that if you are going to produce garbage and we need some way to deal with that, then you have to have sanitation service. And then the sanitation service would match their demand. So if they could get by with once a week with a 90-gallon dumpster, that would be what they'd pay for. If they had to have a 3-yarder dumped every day, then they'd have to pay for that. And so then the garbage associated with that operation would match what they were actually using. Now, if a merchant's already got that and he's got it covered, then you could say, well, okay, I've got garbage available to me because the merchant's providing that. But you just would have to, you could just say, you've got to have that covered somehow. Okay, so that you're not, I guess the thing that I've got a question. I don't know how the dog shack works there at, okay, do they have a garbage contract with the city? Or do they just expect their...
I think they put the stuff in the dumpster behind the alley, which is mine.
See, and so
I'm paying for it.
You're paying for it.
And they also use my electricity, but they pay me for that.
Okay. So it just seems to me like, depends on what you're going to do. It looks like that the fee schedule slides on something other than the length of time that the guy's in place. So it just looks to me like there's a upfront cost. Then after that, there really isn't any cost. Unless I'm missing something here where we would have to go around and inspect, like to make sure he was tied down every day, or in other words, we're doing a building inspection kind of thing to make sure that there's some code that's still being followed.
Your Honor, we did discuss that to a degree that we figured the code enforcement officer would have to be doing some of, at least, whether it's a weekly thing or whatever, we did discuss that. There would be some of that, probably not a lot, but there would be some.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
if I could speak to historically how we have handled our applications. We figured at one time, probably 6 or 7 years ago, that every time someone handled a piece of paper from a member of the public, it was a minimum of $35, upwards to $60, depending on the individual handling that paper. It's not just somebody filling out an application, getting a permit and leaving. It's not that simple. We usually handle that 3 or 4 different times because we're helping with customer service, right? We're helping them by accommodating them and giving them information. So it's not just a one-time fee of transferring that information into a permit. There's more involved in that with a permit application. That's why we have a lot of our permits at $30 for a park reservation fee, or what do we have? Catering. Catering is what? $100. Now, if someone wants to hold in the temporary merchant permit ordinance that you just passed, wanted to hold something in City Park and wanted an open container, we would have to advertise that on the agenda. So now we're looking at more costs, right? We're looking at handling that paper 5 or 6 times, plus the advertisement, plus coming to council. So there's a lot of different factors. It's not just a one-time fee of somebody handling the paper for 10 minutes and it's over and done with. In a perfect world, we would hope it would be that way, but it's not.
Oh, okay. But I didn't make my point right.
Okay.
Okay. My concern is that if a person had a permit for 3 days, you would not do that paperwork over every day. You'd only do it once. If he had the permit for 30 days, you would not go out and do the paperwork again and again and again. You'd only do it once. I want the permit, I think the cost of the permit should reflect the cost to the community. Okay? So if I don't know what the process is, okay, but that's what I'm trying to figure out for the fee schedule, okay? In other words, if the city's cost in having this temporary merchant there for 6 months is $450, then we can justify the size of the permit. But if all we've done is we've processed that same piece of paper, whether the guy's there for 3 days or 6 months, then what we have is a suggestion here that we've turned it into a profit center.
But when you say we're not talking about advertising for a malt liquor drive-by or that type of merchant. So we're not gonna have those expenses, are we?
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
we have had expenses before when someone has had a celebration and would like an open container permit, because those permits have to come in front of the council.
But we're not, this is not one of those. In other words, what I'm trying to say is the merchant, the schedule that we're looking at for this temporary merchant is not gonna be alcohol, tobacco, or background checks. It's just gonna be food handler, revenue for sales tax, et cetera. Is that what we're doing?
And we're not actually doing those inspections, is that correct? We don't have anybody on staff that actually inspects for food.
No.
No, they're just going to show that they have been
They
inspected.
have to prove it.
They just have to prove that they are up to snuff. And so the state of Wyoming is taking care of that. Okay, and same with sales tax. Okay, so the burden to get all that stuff done is on the merchant ahead of time. Okay, then they come to us for the permit, and then I understand we've got to file the permit, we have to keep track of the permit, we have to, if they bought a permit for 3 days, then we're going to have to go back and make sure they're gone. Okay, that type of thing. So, you know, and then you figure somebody's doing that work, and they're probably making, what's minimum wage, $7 an hour, you know, no benefits. No, they're not working for minimum wage, are they? And they are getting paid benefits, and so is that person worth $20 an hour to the city? Is that what our overhead cost would be? I'm just trying to figure out a number here that I can. Okay, come on, I don't want
What
to.
does it cost? What does it cost? What's the time in this?
So you said if you handle this piece of paper, it costs $30, okay? So if there were 3 pieces of paper, would that be $90? Is that or are we talking about, in other words, we're saying we're taking this, we got this information, put a paper clip in that, okay, and then say, come back tomorrow and I'll have your permit ready for you. And then we have to run the permit and print it off and sign the permit. Hope you don't want me to sign all those permits, but the clerk could do it, you know. So the permit's signed, and you come back and pick it up. So what do we touch that paper several times, and if $100 is the fair amount to cover the city's cost to produce the permit, then that's what we ought to charge.
And we just lengthen the day.
See, and we charge the time.
We did that, Your Honor, with child care applications.
Okay, daycare.
Daycare. So we decided that it was going to be $35 for Dave to go inspect that, and it was going to be $30 or $35 for us to process the paperwork.
Okay.
Right? So we came up with that amount. Maybe the way to go would be to have an application fee to cover our costs, and then $1 per day after that. So I understand what you're trying to get to. You want the city to recoup the actual costs that they have,
Yeah.
but you don't want to have a lot of extra money on top of that.
That's right.
So I would suggest an application fee that is non-refundable, like the rest of our applications. And then after that, it's $1 per day, whatever dollar you deem necessary. I don't know, $10 a day, $8 a day, I don't know what it is.
Holly?
We really, I guess that's the question, and I think that's the mayor's point, is what's the difference with the city between 1 day and 6 months?
Your Honor, we would be out doing at least some kind of inspections. If there's somebody that is complaining about this vendor, I mean, there would be some time that would probably be either there would be some. Now, how much, I can't answer that until we have more people that do that. But we have done that with some of our temporary vendors already, is making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. We do have to also verify their sales tax, that they're doing their sales tax, when they bring that to us. So we do have to verify some of those things. So it isn't, normally the people that come in, they come in and ask what they have to do. So we talk to them to start with, we give them the application, they go out, and it usually takes a day or 2 or 3 before they get everything back to us. So
That's a state statute. We don't want to get into city statute on collecting sales tax.
no, we don't collect.
Your Honor, again, we're just going to verify that they will be paying sales tax by them having a sales tax license, and that they are handling food properly by having a Wyoming Department of Agriculture food preparation license, and making sure they have liability insurance so that if somebody dies on their ice cream cone, they will have somebody to sue.
Or slips under the bus.
Or slips under the bus or whatever. Okay, and I guess regarding our cost, if we're sending Dave Paskett out for an hour to do an inspection at $35, we are not even recouping our cost for that, because we've been looking at the wages, the benefits of the cities of Riverton, and it is $50 probably does not cover that. And so
It's $75 for an appraisal just to inspect you whether you're complete or not.
right, and I think realistically looking at that, if you were hiring that person at that wage and that benefit level, and again, all that goes into, producing labor, $50 to $75 is not out of line, I don't think. We're not making any money on that, but we're sure not losing. At $35, we're losing money.
Holly?
So when I look in Utah, and they have all the food trucks, they have the vegetable trucks, they have the clothing, they have all of that. What they do is they set a date before September 16th and a date after September 16th, depending on, for the non-home occupancy fees. So it's $141 or $144, depending on, to save you a little bit of money. Then what they did is they went down through and they've like categorized a ton, but we don't need to do that. But they even have like ice cream. They have, if you're selling clothing, then you're going to be charged this amount depending. So you're going to already be paying one set amount. Then if you're selling clothing, you're going to be paying $191 to sell those clothing of whatever you're doing. If you're doing ice cream, you're going to do $43 and then $44. So, I mean, it just depends. But if we broke it down kind of like that, where you're actually getting the fee at the beginning, and then whatever it is, it's going to make it, because I'm sorry, but when it comes to the farmer part of it, my heart goes out. I mean, I was an FFA girl. So, I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, it's going to take a lot, and they're already traveling. They've already got that expense. I kind of think that if we go off of something like this, and that is exactly, I mean, if we break it down, it's right here. That's what they're doing, and it's working. They have 4 or 5 streets in Salt Lake. You can go and you can get anything from Chinese to Mexican to anything you want, and they're there all summer long. I think they're there year-round. I don't really know. I only go in the summertime, but and they've got everything that you want, and you can get your clothing, you can get your vegetables. They do the farmers market right there, all of that. So, I mean, if we do that application fee, then we sector it out so that, because somebody who's selling the tools and the electronics and that isn't going to be making as much as somebody who's selling peaches from Colorado. They're just not.
That's not our job to decide.
And I get that, but I mean, if you can kind of make that even, you eliminate all of that.
I suggest Holly gets with the community and bring it up.
I guess my issue, though, is if we're looking at recouping cost, that's really what it's going to boil down to. Are we going to have more cost associated with one business over another business? And that's where I get a little bit, I think the mayor's right. If we're in this, it's one thing to have something like that in Utah where you've got a thriving kind of temporary merchant, so to speak, business, and another thing to do something like that in Riverton where
2 million people compared to 10,000.
Yeah. So I think maybe rather than think, the more that we complicate this, the more we're going to be bearing cost as the city. So I think the simpler that we can make this, the better. Because then we're not having to go through and enforce and check and say, are you selling T-shirts at your ice cream truck? And if so, you need to pay us this. I think that gets more complicated than it needs to. And so I think it makes sense just to focus on recouping what we're out for, taking care of the citizens and making sure that what we've got going on is a legitimate business.
John?
In a perfect world, Sandy, when somebody walks in with their application and everything, what do you foresee happening? Do you foresee taking the paperwork and then, as Mrs. Bolander says, several people handle it to process and do all that? And then at that point, do you see having to send somebody out to do an inspection of their site before they can sell? So let's say now that we're handling the permit and they set up in the old Sears parking lot over here, are we going to send somebody out to make sure that they're 25 feet away from the embankment, 50 feet away from something else, 100 feet away from this, or whatever other dimensions we have? Do they have their placards that they need to have displayed saying that they are Wyoming certified food handlers and whatever else? Do you foresee us having to do that, or when they walk in, are we going to process the paperwork, give them a high five, and say good luck?
Your Honor, probably something in between. Because at this point in time, it's going to take a little longer to process that paperwork than what you're saying, because we will, I know we'll talk to them the first time, and they'll be back in. They won't have everything at that point in time. So we'll talk to them at least twice. That's going to be a minimum. My guess on an average, probably 3 times. if there's a question, again, if we have an established business that they have an agreement with, and that has not done this before, then my guess is we probably would make sure that we went out and inspected to make sure that they were back from where they had to be and that they weren't jeopardizing the flow of traffic in and out of that business, and that they weren't, causing backups on Federal or Main or wherever they might have to be. So my guess is we would be doing a small amount of that also.
So my reason for asking that one is I think we kind of take what Councilman Bailey said and try to figure out. So, and I don't want to take away from the handling of the paperwork. I didn't, just trying to expedite my conversation. I know it's handled a lot more than just wham bam. But I think that's because, we've said it a couple times, the city should not be trying to make money,
Well, we don't want to lose money.
Well, exactly, and that's what I'm trying to figure out is what is it honestly going to take, to get that person established to where we feel comfortable letting the ice cream truck park over at Mr. D's parking lot, whatever. That's where I think we need to get to that point and establish that.
Your Honor?
Go ahead.
I would certainly speak to finding a good application fee value and then a reasonable additional fee that's consistent for any type of business. I would agree that it'd be great to have the staff to be able to designate whether or not it's a shirt place or whatever, but then if the shirt place is selling at the ice cream place, and then we got to get into well, that's a violation, and now we have to enforce that, and it just seems like we could keep it fairly simple with a reasonable application fee that covers our costs and a good, reasonable, and I would maybe even argue that $450 for 6 months is unreasonable. It seems high to me for a temporary business. So that would be my takeaway is less than $450.
Nice and vague.
Well, since we're not making any motions here,
No, we're not.
It's kind of
and we're trying to give staff direction, okay? So that then what they come back to us with next week doesn't need the same level of discussion that we've had here this evening. And so I guess
seems like we've got some background in applicate reasonable value of processing a typical application of things. So we go with that. If that seems reasonable for that, it should be reasonable for this. If we go with that same concept, it's the additional cost, factoring in the possible inspections, and it's a bit of an averaging process. Would a 3-day person be inspected the same way a 6-month person would be? No, but it just creates more work to come up with a value of, well, you're 3 days, so we're only going to charge you this. You're 6 months, so we're going to charge you this. Then it just becomes a staff issue that seems
to me like you could say, we're going to socialize this. We realize that some people are going to pay more for their permit per unit of sale than somebody else might. But we're still going to say that's the way it is. It's going to cost you $100 to get the permit.
Because that's what it costs.
Because that's what it's going to cost us
Right.
on the average. Okay, so some guy, maybe it doesn't cost us that. We can get by for $75 or $80. The other guy, it's going to cost us $120, but we're going to average it around that. It just seems to me if we just had a flat fee for everybody, just said let's go with that. Let's say $75 gets you the permit, and then a year from now we can go back and take a look and say, so how much money did we actually bring in, and what do you think it cost us? Then you could take a look at that. It just looks to me like we could make this so complex that we would eventually get to the point we would hate to come to work.
So, Your Honor, I'm understanding that you would just like to see an application fee and it's over and done with. It's kind of
That's
like
what I'd
a
like.
business license or a
That's right.
contractor renewal.
That's right.
or
That's right. And I just
something.
wouldn't.
Overthinking it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. I just wouldn't care. I just, in my mind, it doesn't seem to make any difference to me whether the guy's there for 3 days or 6 months. Okay. We're going to be involved in about the same amount of work to deal with that. Okay, I just want to make sure that the fee that we assess is somewhere rational to that. So if the guy's going to be here for 3 days and he figures he can make a quick buck and he's going to make a lot of money in 2 or 3 days and then he's going to be gone, then I think, $75 to $100, something like that, is not too much to ask him to pay. On the other hand, somebody that's there for 6 months, that guy's almost become an institution in the city of Riverton. And you say, well, go ahead and get by. I don't think we can use this as a way to make up the difference on the fact that he's not paying property tax or something like that. I don't see how you can deal with that. And obviously, if you've got an ice cream truck somewhere along the line, you're going to wind up getting some taxes assessed by the county on that. Okay, and so I don't know that we need to. We're overthinking that. Okay,
and I would even argue if in the argument of additional expenses like for trash or something like that, if the property owner is bearing those, then it's up to the property owner to charge rent to the individual to compensate for that.
Right.
Because he's going to be paying perhaps more, or there's going to be.
I just think that the garbage issue could be handled simply by saying, so how are you going to handle garbage? Okay, do you need a dumpster? Okay, and if the guy says, yeah, I'm going to have a dumpster, or say they're selling something that comes in cardboard boxes and everybody takes away the merchandise and leaves him with the cardboard boxes, then he's going to need some way to deal with the cardboard boxes. And then you say, okay, well, we'll set you up with a cardboard dumpster, and this is what it's going to cost you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I think we just do that independently of the fee, and that way we've taken care of that. Is there anything else that we've missed here, like water or power or no?
Your Honor, I actually think this would simplify things even more for the local businesses, because in that case, then we could do the same thing, temporary merchant for the shaved ice, for the taco bus, for
Everybody.
those. It would be just like.
Right. See, it's a flat,
At least
it's just a
that's
one-year flat fee.
I don't have to even try to figure out how to do something else,
Okay.
because it'd be a much less fee than that.
Right.
Simpler the better.
What has the variance cost in the past? Do you remember?
I can tell you in a minute, Tim. Variance was $170.
So this would
There
be
was-
better.
There was more going into that, though. I mean, that's
Oh, yeah.
moving parts and
Public meeting.
Hearings.
right,
Yes.
publishing.
Advertising and.
Everything.
So this
sending out
this would be
letters.
a advantage, is where I guess I'm going for the shaved ice barn. Instead of having to come once a year and spend $170, they can spend $100.
Yep. Yep.
No.
$170, just $50.
Oh, for renewal. That was a new one.
Could I make one suggestion?
Come up.
Why can't you just do your minimal fee and $100 or $150 to $200 deposit that's refunded at the end of your business? When you're here for 3 days or 6 months, you get your $100 back, you get your deposit back. If you guys have to make an inspection because of complaints, then they have to put another deposit down. That will compensate you for any inspections, anything like that, anything you're putting in, a minimal fee with a refundable deposit.
That's just more administration. We got to.
Well, it is, but you're being fair to everybody that's there. The people that aren't doing anything wrong aren't paying extra. If you've got somebody that's a problem and you have to inspect them 2 or 3 times every time you inspect them, they got to redo their deposit.
I could see somebody that doesn't like a business then realizing that and saying, oh, I'm going to call in to have them inspect because I don't like this guy. I mean, there's just a lot of abuses in
If
that.
you do an inspection and there is a non-conforming condition, you lose your deposit.
But we'd still be holding somebody's money in trust, which if we can avoid that, it would make it a lot.
But then we
I think I just heard Mia grumble.
have to account for that money in trust, and we have to minister it and count it and watch over it.
And that actually would be something the finance committee, I mean, it's the same thing we do with restitution from victims. We get money in and we have to approve it getting paid out even though we just.
Do you guys have enough direction?
Yes, Your Honor, we do.
Courtney?
Yes.
You have enough, you think you have enough, we've,
Beat it.
Properly.
okay, so we'll expect to see something, because we have two other items here on this agenda tonight, okay, that we sort of need to, because they're the same kind of stuff. And so, like, okay, so permitted use of public property discussion. So interim city administrator's report.
Your Honor and council members, we use our parks for social interaction. We use our parks for recreational activity. We use our parks to appreciate the greenery. I would ask the council, since we're passing this temporary merchant permit and we might have people that want to use that not as an event, but as a place to make a profit under temporary merchant permit. If someone wants to put a bouncy house in City Park, we would say that's an activity. And what if someone wants to put a beer garden in City Park? I guess I'm asking the council, are there any absolute don'ts to the use of public property? What if someone wants to set something up at 422 East Main? Are we going to have, it's been a long time policy that there was no alcohol at JC or City Park. Do we want to include that now with temporary merchant permitting?
You know, looking at me for.
Well, Mike,
I'm just looking down one end of the table or the other to see if anybody.
There's a lot of alcohol in City Park
wants
right now.
wants to get onto this.
Yeah, we ought to make them pay a pile.
you know, this 17th is going to come and go, but alcohol permitting in the park isn't. And we've been fighting alcohol usage in the park for 30 years. And I don't want one day, it's not going to wreck the eclipse of the sun if we don't sell beer in the city park, even though it would increase our benevolence in Riverton and bring in, I don't care. It's just the police are just gonna be mad at us for the rest of our lives.
Mike?
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I don't think any that I can remember, and Chief, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but any of the previous alcohol, malt liquor permits we've had in the park have had any major issues at all. And the issues that we have in City Park are obviously not permitted because we don't permit them there. So I don't think you can blame permitting alcohol in a park on the problem we have in the park. But I wouldn't disagree that that isn't necessarily something we want to do. Okay, but I don't think you can blame everything on, oh, these guys had an alcohol permit and they're serving beer, to, mass rioting in City Park. That gets attributed to stupid people. So.
I guess
That said, we still don't want to sell or have any alcoholic beverages in City Park under any celebration.
But looking at it broadly, what makes Sunset Park any different than City Park or JC Park?
Past practice.
I guess the point is, I mean, anytime we'd be having anybody conduct temporary merchant permitted business on municipal property, the governing body is going to have to be approving that anyway. So I suppose that the point is, if somebody's interested in that, then let's discuss it then, what they want to do and decide. That's the whole way we wrote it in there. So I don't think we want to sit there and say for sure, you know, this is something we don't want to have whatsoever, but just give them the information about the process and bring it, and we'll vote on it and discuss it then. Right now, nobody's knocking down our door. I guess let's put it that way.
No, somebody is.
Your Honor, someone is. Getting questions daily. I think Chief Murphy has gotten quite some questions. If someone would like to hold a dance at the city parking lot, which is city property, can they bring in a band and sell alcohol in a contained area? If they, Mr. Larson.
Is that down there, down at our parking lot behind Kuzel's?
No. Oh, behind
That's one of the
Kuzel's.
places
Behind
he's
Kusel.
staying, yeah.
Yes.
But that's different. That's different than City Park.
Your Honor, we also do have a request for City Park for alcohol that will be coming up.
I guess I'm wrong.
There you go. There you go, Tim.
Hey, I haven't had my finger on the
March they
I've been
go.
out of the country, you know, in my defense. I'm still trying to catch with work.
Now, our problem from an administration point is that we do have a non-refundable fee for the application, $100, whether they get it or not. So I think in order to be transparent with the public, they need to know the permitted uses for any public property, whether it's a parking lot, an empty vacant lot, or it's green.
But I guess the point is, though, don't we have that in terms of application, review, and issuance on C, that we say prior to issuance of a permit, the governing body must approve the specific event or occasion and establish whether or not a permit will be required?
But Tim, in the past, we have said J.C. Park and City Park are off limits.
Right.
We've let Sunset Park do it. I don't know where else. We've let people close off the street and have a dance in the street.
Teeter.
But now,
You know, there's been some of these
Closed off
bars,
Broadway before.
you know, they've closed off Broadway and had a big band and party in the street. Well, I guess I'd rather have them in the city parking lot behind Kusel's than I would blocking off Broadway. I mean, if I was going to pick the difference of those two, to me, that would be a lot safer place to do that than on Broadway. And so,
Your Honor, we also do have one that's coming up for the softball fields down by the Little League fields, just so you're aware.
no, you have to stay if you come. There-
okay, all right. Okay,
An adult beverage truck.
okay, so,
Beer through.
you know, I do observe that in Lander, you know, they have Brewfest, and they simply abandoned open container laws and all that kind of stuff, and are open 24 hours a day, and people wander from one establishment to the next, and, you know, and then they figure out some way to pick up all the plastic cups in the morning. And, you know, and just say, wow, that was so much fun, and we ought to do it again. And I guess we've had a different feeling about it here. And so my thought comes that even at Sunset Park, where we have allowed alcohol, it's not on a commercial basis.
No,
It's open container permit. And so what we've allowed people to do is have a wedding party there or something, and have some alcohol, and that's different than opening up and we're gonna do this as a commercial enterprise. And so it just seems to me like we should look at something different than that. And I'm just I have a tendency to agree with Mr. Larson that what we've done in City Park in the past is make a real solid attempt to say open container in City Park is not an acceptable thing. And I just feel like that would be a mistake to do that. We would live with that after that. You'd say, well, gee, you did it for Eclipse just because you could make some money off of it. And I just don't think that's the, I mean, we basically turned down the guy at Good to Go and said, no, you're across the street from the City Park. We're not going to approve a retail liquor license sale to your establishment.
Well, Your Honor, we have spent $300,000 on a very prominent activity for the youth, and then to allow beer to be sold or liquor to be sold or any is just smacks of I don't want to use the words.
Okay, well, it's okay. So, Sean.
I guess I'd be interested in hearing what Chief Murphy's thoughts are on that. What his thoughts are as far as what it would bring to him and to his police department, if I could, Your Honor.
Ben.
Your Honor, I guess what I would say is the one time that we did have open container down for the rendezvous days for the Friday night cruise, we did do that one year, and it was a nightmare, to say the least, for the police department. We got so many complaints that night, and it was just so out of hand because of the alcohol. We've never done it again. And I would say as long as I'm employed here, I would not condone it. With that being said, some of the bar owners that have come to me as far as the softball fields wanting a live band and alcohol, they've always been very responsible bar owners, and we've never had any issues with them in the past. And so if it's a very specific event and they're willing to work with us, I'm more than willing to entertain that.
Okay, so at a softball field, maybe as a venue for a concert or something like that.
For a one-night type of deal, I'd be more than happy to.
Might be something that, no?
I just think there's a lot of kids running around out there. And I guess it has to depend on the night and if there's something going on at the Little League field. That's for a later conversation to discuss that.
This one is for the Eclipse.
Okay.
So if you're going to have something like
Yeah,
that. So
baseball will be over by then.
And I guess
So we wouldn't be using it as baseball diamond at that moment.
Right.
the other issue, I guess, which is of concern to me, is just whether Eric has the staff to man. I mean, if we're going to have 2 of these or 6 of them going on, that is a staffing issue, and to have enough bodies to, patrol those reasonably, and I know they would maybe even pay overtime or after-hours wage or whatever it is, but, I mean, we're going to be spread thin, and I don't think you could probably get a rent-a-cop, for lack of a better term, probably for 500 miles. I don't know.
Your Honor, if we are actually specifically talking about the Eclipse, we will not have the manpower.
Right.
Absolutely not.
But like on the Friday night cruise downtown, Ralph's put up a bunch of hay bales along the sidewalk and extended their serving area to outdoors, and maybe several others that bartend did this, maybe even closed off the street there one night. And,
Your Honor, that's correct.
yeah, and so that kind of thing is manageable.
Yes, sir, and we work with them a month prior to those, and we go work with them, we inspect what they're going to do, and so we are through that whole process with them, and we work as a team to make those happen.
Right.
And we're more than happy to do that.
Yeah, okay. I just guess I don't. Looks like Holly's going to say something.
I don't think you want to know my opinion. It doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to be devil's advocate here,
All right, do it.
and I'm going to pretend like I have a filter for a second. So, in City Park, what happens if you have events going and there's already people down there that are drinking? Are you going to arrest them? Are you going to do something with them? And then you're going to have 20,000 people you're going to add to that, and they're going to see people drinking. They're going to drink because people are like sheep, so they're going to see and do. So then are you going to arrest those people as well? And then pretty soon we're going to have everybody that came for the eclipse in jail? Like, I guess I'm just kind of confused. I mean, I guess my thought process is I'm kind of like you on this sense, and Kyle, please don't hate me. But, you know, I mean, if we could, I mean, in a sense, if we're going to punish one, we're going to have to punish them all. But, I mean, we don't do that as is. So in a sense, if we allow it in an area that is already regulated and they know they have to stay within this sector, and we can make money off of it, and we can get all the people down there, and we can really pull people. That's like the heart of Riverton anyways, just for the eclipse. I'm not saying the rest of the time. Technically, if you did it right, you could actually regulate it and you could make money off this. And I mean, Lander does it, Casper does it, everybody does it, and they make a lot of money. And we could benefit from this. They're already gonna. And if you don't think they're gonna sneak it in coolers, or they're gonna sneak it in little baggies and that kind of stuff, they're backpacks, all that stuff. If they're gonna be walking around drinking, I mean, I think we just need to be realistic about it. So it's just not a matter of, and we know that you're not going to. Please don't hate me over there either. Like, I'm just being honest, not you.
Staring at the back of my head, I heard.
Oh, no, I thought Eric was. I mean, I'm just being honest here. So, I mean, I think it's either a matter of, I feel so self-conscious. Okay, so I'm just saying, like, I just feel as though if we actually jump on board and we just regulate an area for a city park, and kind of keep it contained in a sense, and maybe hire some people for like security, we could actually be able to benefit from it instead of the way that we're going to just say no to it, and they're going to do it anyways, and then we're going to all have to just deal with the aftermath of it. That's what I have to say. That's all.
I think we've got so many logistical things that are going to come into play in the eclipse that to add that to it just seems like it would be an incredible headache. I mean, I get what you're saying, I do, but I just think it's kind of like we were saying with the permitting here. If we can simplify things some and still have it be something that
Then
works.
open it up like he's saying. I think, honestly, because if you don't think they're going to be walking from one bar to another drinking, I mean, they're gonna. You know they're gonna.
No, people are going to be out with their glasses on. And
Oh, absolutely. I forgot. Sorry. I mean, I do. I think that if we opened it up and we really worked with the community and we figured things out and we took that approach that we can all come together and be adults and open it up, I do think it would work. Yes, don't look at me like that. It would take more logistics, but maybe I'm just a true optimistic here, but I do think that it would work. I mean, they're gonna do it one way or another.
Your Honor, may I say something? I can tell you that in that instance for that weekend, we are going to be fully staffed. We've already talked about it. We're going to be a very customer service type of organization and not a enforcement type of organization. So no, we will not be arresting a lot of people for open container. We will certainly talk to them and let them know that it's against the law, but we are not going to be arresting a lot of people at that time for enforcement type of thing.
You realize this is being broadcast on TV?
I do.
Got a free pass on August 21st.
It's okay.
That's the challenge, and I wouldn't want to overwhelm your staff. That'd be the last thing I would try to do. And we also just said we don't want to make any money on any of these fees.
And I get that, but I mean,
So
one way
what
or
do we
another-
care as the city?
I know, so
Just
if we open
expense
it
for
up,
us.
it's gonna be an expense no matter
I'm
what.
being devil's advocate.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'll just shut up then.
So, Your Honor, this is what I see, specifically in relation to the eclipse. If you have event coordinators that have come to the council saying, we'd like to hold an event in City Park for 2 days, we pay whatever we need to pay, then we need to know if there's any limitations on what we use that property for. So if someone from a bar wanted to rent a lot and get a catering permit, they'd have to get an open container permit. Or if I wanted to go and set up a beer garden and just go buy beer and come back and sell it, I'd have to get a malt beverage permit, which we have in our code
You'd
as
have to
well.
give it away because you can't sell it.
Yeah, right. Okay, but, so I guess we're specifically asking for that weekend. I think other than that, you'll have events come to you and they'll be small enough that you'll know what's happening, but when you have a city park full of vendors, it's gonna be different. And they don't know, coming from another town, that when you walk on a sidewalk and walk outside Bar 10, it's open container. So the reason I wanted to bring this up tonight, if Georgia and I are coordinating that event, we need to know if there is no permitting for any alcohol in City Park, or if you would consider a container in that area for 2 days.
Can you tell me what city allows open container walking down the street?
Lander?
Casper, it's all been discussed.
Douglas.
Oh, yeah.
Jackson,
Pinedale.
Yep.
Aspen.
Really?
Oh,
Really?
yeah. Sometimes, not all the time.
Special events.
Just
Special events, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Las Vegas, you can walk down there 24/7, 365.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, you can do a lot of things.
In most of these resort-related communities, they will have specific times or dates that they just open it up as a free-for-all. I'm going to a meeting in Breckenridge, has nothing to do with this, but they have a big beer fest there for that weekend in September. And, I'll guarantee every one of those resort kind of towns does something like that multiple times a year.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, sorry.
Your Honor, I guess my only fear is when we open it up for this one-time event, and I have nothing against opening it up. I think it's an opportunity. I don't know how I feel, but how do we, so the next time that Tim Hancock comes up because he wants to have a wedding reception in City Park because he really likes the backdrop of the skate park in his pictures, how do we regulate him to have no alcohol in there? Or do we say yes? Or we open ourselves up to prolonged? And I mean, that's my only concern is how do we, and it goes back to the same thing, how do we discriminate, or are we discriminating if we say yes to the eclipse because it's the one time in 172 years it happens, or is it, that's my only fear.
Well, we sell out the other parks to those areas that they've normally had.
I'm not worried about that, Kyle. Right now, we know that there is something that's coming in front of us for City Park. It's been stated. So my question is, if we do it now, and I'm not saying yes or no, please don't think that, but how do we say to Mike Bailey, who wants to hold his annual summer picnic for all of his 275 employees or whatever he has, how do we say, no, he can't put 6 kegs out there and hire Bar 10 to come out and do that? How do we tell him no?
Because he only does it once every 175 years.
Exactly. I mean, and
It's easy, I just write no.
Okay, so I guess if you wanted to know what my thought was on it, okay, is that I don't think we should have alcohol in City Park. And I realize there's a tennis court there that isn't being used, and you could put a guard on each gate, and the people would go in, and you could regulate it to some degree, and you could deal with that. And I think it would be nice to have City Park where at least some of the people are sober. And I mean, I basically quit going to football games at the University of Wyoming because I really got tired of the guy behind me throwing up or spilling his drink on me, or just having lost his filter because he had enough alcohol on board to where he was simply an unpleasant person to be around. well, you know, if you want to fence off a Ralph's parking lot, or you want to fence off the parking lot behind, you know, Kusel's there, or you want to close a couple of city streets, you know, where there's a bar next door, and they have restroom facilities, and they have, you know, all that kind of stuff. It seems to me like that's a different issue. But City Park, we could say, we could put up a sign, we're not going to have any alcohol in City Park. And so if you want to come here, you're not going to run into that. It just seems to me like that's the way to do it. If the rest of you guys want to go the other way, I think I'll be really busy that day doing something else. So, you know, I'll be down here in front of City Hall trying to take care of people who have heat stroke or something, but or showing them how to get to the hospital or whatever. But well, you know, none of that interests me. But just because that's not my personal thing doesn't mean that other people can't have a good time and enjoy themselves. And it just seems to me like we have plenty of opportunity for that without expanding that into City Park. That's my opinion. So I don't know if you still want to bring that, you know, if whoever it is that wants to do that wants to come to City Council and argue their case, I guess they can do it. But I mean, to do that, that's more than just the permitted use of public property. That doesn't have to do with renting a spot for to sell hot dogs in City Park.
Or vendor.
A vendor in City Park. Okay, that's not that part of it, you know, because we've got a committee that takes care of that. Okay, but if you're going to do open container or permit or something like that for alcohol, that's going to have to come to City Park, and we're going to have to advertise that, and we're going to go through the process, and we're going to take comment, and you know, if you want to run the chance of that and try it, then I guess be my guest. But you know, and I guess I could say if it was a 3-3 vote, I wouldn't break the, you know, I wouldn't stop that. But at the same time, I just don't think that's a. Do you have enough direction? You don't have any direction, do you?
Well, Your Honor, I'm gathering that the consensus is that no alcohol permitted at City Park or J.C. Park is still in place, unless someone wants to come to the council and make a request.
And try to make a case for that.
Okay.
I mean, I think we got that passed as I don't know if it's code or not, but it's certainly minute action. That we weren't gonna issue any permits for alcohol in J.C. Park or Teeter Park or City Park. But that gives you a lot of other places to do it.
I know, Holly, you feel that this is going to happen anyway, but I'm not going to encourage it. I'm not going to be part of it. We have worked the last 10 years to make that park so that everybody can enjoy it versus the few. And one day, I'm not going to tear it down.
And I understand that. I mean, I do.
And I
get it.
appreciate that.
Okay, Mike?
And I guess as long as we have some venues that are available for people that want to do that, like the baseball fields behind Kusel's or some others, I think then you have the people that want to do something like that, have a place to go. The people that want to do more of a family atmosphere can go to City Park, and it solves both the problems. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. We're certainly not a dry community.
Right.
Not trying.
And I guess, I just hate to see problems in City Park blame on responsible adults that do what they're supposed to and only in the places they're supposed to. You know, it'd be like blaming all of us for driving cars because somebody went out and crashed. I mean, you know, it's not fair.
No, it'd be the gasoline.
Yeah, it's the gasoline's fault.
Right.
And then, are we going to be charging transient merchant fees to the people that are going to be coming to City Park and vending their wares?
Are we?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
If they're going to be getting permits, I would think.
I don't want the city competing with me and Visor and the ability to have somebody sitting on my property selling something and me get $50. It's not fair that they can go to the park for free.
I guess I looked at that differently, Councilman Bailey, so I'm glad you brought that up. So if you have Arts in Action that would like to hold an event, Day in the Park, and under the temporary merchant permit they can, then on top of that, charge every single vendor in there, plus the fee that Arts in Action charges of $65.
Okay, I have 10 acres out north of town. If I decided to have a big day in the park and I invited vendors there, would you be charging the vendors a merchant fee?
Outside of town?
No, it's in the city limits. The answer is yes. Our ordinance that we just passed said we would be charging them a temporary merchant's fee, right? They were just going to come for the weekend.
Not unless it's on commercial or municipal owned property.
It's commercial property.
Oh, okay.
You see what I mean? So you'd be competing with me, going to do my own little day in the park on gravel, not grass, but, you see what I mean? So I don't think it's fair that we're going to exempt some people and not others.
Well,
They're all there to make a profit.
Arts in Action is a 501c or whatever nonprofit organization, and their money comes from the benevolence of the city, allowing them to rent for one day City Park.
I understand that, but the people that rent from them
I don't care what.
in there to make it.
I don't care what they do, but that's for one day, and we've been doing that for a long time.
I understand we have.
But if we were gonna open that up for every other weekend to a swap meet, to all kinds of stuff like that, we would want to charge a fee to take care of grass, to take care of garbage, to do all of that. We couldn't allow that to occur without charging a fee, because our park would go out of business. It'd be decimated.
I still think there's an argument that the day in the park is no different than the Eclipse event we're going to have, or if Kyle Larson said he wanted to rent the park and bring 10 of his buddies in to sell whatever, cotton candy. I mean, they're going to be making a dollar doing that. I think it's reasonable. Okay, they're serving food. Do we get ag permit fees from them and sales tax fees from them? We're already handling the paperwork.
Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Okay. The sales tax people do go into City Park, I learned, as the sales pet tax people do, and I'm assuming, I know the health department does too. But that is a city-sponsored event, the Day in the Park is, and that money goes back into the community for something, for scholarships or whatever. And this is the same thing with the Day in the Park that they're planning on now. It's a city-sponsored event on city property in order to make money for other nonprofit organizations, basically, to help her. So that's a little bit different than you doing that on your property for profit at that point in time. Now, if you said that it was going to be for a specific fundraiser type of a thing, then I think you'd bring it to city council and see if you could find out if that could happen.
I would argue that the guy that's in City Park for Day in the Park or the Eclipse selling lemonade and hot dogs is there for a profit. And he is not giving anything back to the city other than maybe a little sales tax revenue. And I know it's how it's always been done, but I would feel remiss if I didn't bring it up.
Well, yeah, but
Because-
that's for the money that the city makes is on the rental of the property.
The city doesn't make anything.
Well, no, I mean, the organization that donates that Arts in
Arts in
Action
Action
gives the money
generates some
away.
fees.
Yes, and they're in it, the people that are renting there are in it, but we're not talking Sports Fields or Cabin Creek Homes or some big deal. It's just mom and pop making quilts and selling knickknacks.
I understand, but they're doing that for a profit.
Oh, of course they are, but they're not
Your Honor,
selling
they are-
tires. I'm sorry.
Your Honor, those people, though, that go to the park, they're still paying a fee. They're paying $65 to be there. So they're paying probably not a lot different than what we're looking at charging at 75 or whatever. So they are paying a fee.
To Arts in Action.
To Arts in Action, and that money then goes back into our community. And so that's a fundraiser. I don't know how we could look at that any differently, and that's exactly what this is going to do.
I'll guarantee you, you're gonna have a vendor come up and talk to you about it. I'll just
Well, but that's their.
Why did this gal here, she's at Day in the Park, and she didn't have to pay a permit fee, but the guy sitting a block down the street in between Pizza Hut and Good to Go had to pay a fee? You see what I mean? So there's an argument there, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just saying I think it's something we need to bounce around and understand that the public will figure out what the best, if they can save $10 and be in the park instead of somewhere else, that's where they're gonna be. And they're gonna make as much profit as they can, and that's great, that's the American way. But I don't think we should just give them a free ride in doing it.
So then do we just charge them all the same and then we cut the check to the arts?
I don't,
Okay, but what we have is,
digress, so.
yeah, we are kind of off, but a difference here would be that we have given the park over to Arts in Action, and they're handling the administrative overhead of dealing with each of those vendors and setting them up and collecting the money and sorting all that kind of stuff out. And so the city's not heavily involved in that, although there are parks people present, right? And the city's got to figure out something for power, and because there's some of those guys that pull electricity, and so I'm assuming that there's something. Well, and traffic, and certainly traffic control is an issue, around City Park. Well, this is the Eclipse is certainly a can of worms, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, we've got a couple months to work on this and maybe get it figured out a little bit better, but, okay. I got one other thing here. It says community development fee discussion.
Your Honor, can I make this simple?
You could, if you would, you're certainly welcome to try.
To try the best I can. Okay, you recently just passed utility raises for the utility. This is the similar thing with the Community Development Department. We have building fees building permit fees that we charge in several other areas. What we have done, we took this to our Board of Appeals. They help us make a lot of decisions when it comes to the building department. We have not raised anything for 3 years on our fees there. So what we did, and I've done this in the past, we kind of take 2 or 3 years in a row and then add it. We don't change it every year because I've got some numbers that are so small that if you add 3%, it doesn't ever come up to too much. So all I did with most of our fees is we added a total of, last year was 1%, this year 2.7. We added 3.7% to our building permit fees, and the Board of Appeals agreed to recommend that to council. So that's pretty much what we've done with all of our fees for all the building permits and the zoning changes and the variance applications and home occupations and all those types of things. So that's pretty much what we've done. One thing that we did add a little bit to our residential childcare permit, the renewal doesn't take much, but a new one, we do have to send out letters, and we didn't have a separation of that, so we did make a new daycare permit be $100. The other ones are still $65. I think that was the main one that we changed differently.
Ms. Larson?
What did we average just going up? Let's say that your average building is X, and and our permit raised that amount by $20, $30?
It'd basically be, I'd need a calculator. If we had a new residential construction, it's 42 cents a square foot instead of 40 cents a square foot. So 2 cents a square foot. So 1,000.
4 to 5%.
Pardon?
4 or 5% looks, I mean, $2 on 40 is 5%. Or $2 on 40 cents on 40 cents is 5%.
Well, I mean, we might have rounded.
Probably rounded it up.
We did and did 4% on, and so some of those ended up being a little less, some of them ended up being more, because it's really tough to do that, because some of the stuff I've got 12 cents, so if you take 1,000 square feet times.
20 bucks.
Yeah, 3 points, so larger ones, they might, great big large project, you be maybe.
Just covers the cost.
Yeah, it really, that's all it is CPI. We just did it for the consumer price index.
And Sandy, on an average building permit, how much staff time do you spend between doing the permit, doing inspections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Are we talking days in here?
Yeah, not that, but the normal one. Dave's got to go out at least 4 times and do inspections, I bet.
Your Honor, it does depend on the projects. Several years ago, because the Community Development Department does more than just building permits, we do a lot of things for the city and for the citizens. There's a lot of different things that don't necessarily bring in money, like our code enforcement and those types of things. There was a resolution by the council that said we needed to that the Community Development Department needed to come up with at least 40% of the cost of that department. So we do bring in 40% of our costs. So we do bring some money into the city. Now, not counting last year, but in the previous years, we were making even up to 60%. We were covering our costs. So we've done well. Last year
Covering
was
60% of the cost?
60% of our community development costs. So we've done pretty well on that. Now,
So we were only losing 40%.
Yeah.
the general fund.
Government math, that works better that way.
Well, the general fund is paying, the general fund, is paying, there's a lot of things that the city does that doesn't make money.
Oh, and I understand that. That's why I was asking if you had a man-hours that a normal 2,000 square foot house took in processing to see if that came anywhere close to paying for that time.
Yeah.
Is sort of, I guess, what I'm looking at.
We'll look at that. We'll look at that, specifically on that. I know of what we do overall, and I do keep track of that, but I haven't done one. But like I said, we do a lot of different things. Somebody calls in and they want you to find some corners on their property. They want you to check some, we do that. We talk to a lot of people and have them come in, and we look over their plans on what they might want to do and give them a lot of suggestions. So we do a lot of things besides just give them a permit and go out and do the inspections. We probably cover the cost of that specifically.
And just my thought would be that you ought to round that up. Instead of coming out with a permit fee that's $31.72, because we multiplied it times, 3.7, the next step's $35.
Your Honor, we did. We made these all even numbers, and the reason for that is our permit program does not take cents.
Doesn't take pennies.
Doesn't take.
Terrific. Okay.
So we're good on it.
Great. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Any questions on this? We're okay with this. cost of living.
We will bring a resolution the next meeting then.
Okay. The chair would entertain a motion to reconvene into our special meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You may note that the county attorney has decided that they don't want to provide us with a prosecuting attorney for city court anymore. And we said, so he said, well, I'll keep doing it until the 1st of July. And we said, save your money. And so Rick Sollers is going to be our prosecuting attorney for city court. And he'll do it for the same amount of money we were paying the county attorney. Okay? We've already appointed him to be the city attorney, so we don't have to take any action, but I thought you ought to know that we still have a prosecuting attorney. Okay? The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye. We can go home.